There are several conversations still ongoing in Battlefield 6 that seem to be treated as if they're all in separate vacuums. And I get the impression that a lot of players having these conversations don't even realize how closely connected their individual ideas really are. The latest conversation has been how some core modes have been taken out of rotation recently. A longer standing topic is people complaining about bot-heavy lobbies, even in standard modes. And just those two topics alone aren't necessarily separate issues. They're more connected than many players realize or even understand. Okay, so a recurring conversation I keep seeing lately comes from the console players. Console players have been saying things like, I don't want to play against PC players. Mouse and keyboard has an advantage. PC players are sweaty. I'm tired of dealing with PC lobbies. And it's almost always followed up with some derivative of give us console-only crossplay or give us input-based matchmaking. Well, okay, that's interesting. And Battlefield gives you guys a switch. You can turn crossplay off. Problem solved, right? Well, if they turn off crossplay, it sparks an entirely new conversation. Why can't I find a fucking match? Why is my server half empty? Why are all these bots everywhere? How does Battlefield supposedly have all these players and I'm playing against Hot Dogs for Life, the AI support player? So apparently Battlefield 6 gives console players a fascinating choice. You can have PC players mixed in with your matches or bots to replace them. Pick your poison. Now, let's not get this all twisted up. No, I'm not making PC Bad, the video, brought to you in Dolby Stereo surround sound. And I'm not going to spend 30 minutes pretending every mouse and keyboard player is some genetically engineered cybernetic killing machine sitting 12 inches from a $6,000 computer. And don't forget the Terminator movie theme music. No, that's not the argument. But there are legitimate reasons some console players don't particularly want PC included in their matchmaking pools. There are indeed several of those console players concerned about mouse precision or movement, tracking or higher-end hardware, higher frame rates, cheating exposure, which is kind of funny to me, but that's a different conversation. Aim assist arguments, which is another funny concern from console players in my opinion. And simply feeling that mixed input competition isn't equivalent competition. That last one might be fair, but again, different conversation and not the focus of today's discussion. Now, overall, whether every single one of these perceived advantages actually translates into the massive competitive disparity some players believe exists is a whole nother fucking conversation entirely. Because console players themselves don't even agree about it. You'll find controller players saying, I compete with PC just fine. You'll hear PC players arguing controller has aim assist. You'll see controller players at the top of the scoreboards. You'll witness mouse and keyboard players at the bottom. You'll even watch somebody getting annihilated by another player and they immediately decide that the input device must have been responsible. Welcome to multiplayer gaming, folks. We got all sorts of poisons for you to choose from. Come check out our wares. But I don't actually need to prove that PC players have some universal competitive advantage over console players to make this argument. Because the important part is much, much simpler. A meaningful number of console players believe their experience gets worse when they are placed against PC players. The belief is real, even if the actual perceived advantages may not be. Both can be true at the same time. And these console players are asking Battlefield for an alternative. So, Battlefield gives them one. Turn crossplay off. And that's where this whole conversation takes a wild turn. Because I think there's an assumption lurking within this conversation. If I'm on PlayStation and I turn crossplay off, what am I imagining? Probably something along the lines of, fine, just give me console players. Maybe PlayStation, maybe Xbox, maybe both. Just keep PC out of it. Except, that's not what you're asking Battlefield to do. With crossplay enabled, Battlefield says console matchmaking prioritizes other console players. Prioritizes. PC players are supposed to enter that matchmaking pool when there aren't enough console players available to fill the server. But if you disable crossplay, you're restricting yourself to your own platform. PlayStation isn't suddenly creating a giant PlayStation plus Xbox console-only matchmaking pool. And Xbox isn't doing the same thing either. You've effectively said, give me players on my platform who are also playing with crossplay disabled, who are also eligible for the match I'm trying to enter. That's a very different request altogether. And now we need to talk about the fucking bots. Because the complaints about bots are every fucking where. Console players disable crossplay because they don't want PC players. Then they enter whatever mode they want to join, whether it's Conquest, Breakthrough, Escalation, whatever they're trying to play, and discover empty slots, half-filled servers, longer than usual queues, matches that won't start. This is rare, but I've read some comments on the socials suggesting that this is a real thing. Or the bane of a lot of players' existence, PC or console, bots filling the empty seats. Recent Xbox players have described crossplay off matchmaking as sometimes nearly impossible. And other players report waiting several minutes for Conquest or Escalation to start and still bots entered the chat. PS5 players have made the same complaints. And here's the part that drives people fucking insane. Battlefield isn't some obscure game with 17 people playing on it. So naturally the players say, where the fuck is everybody? Or my favorite, the game is dead, folks. And where the fuck is everybody is actually a fair question. But if you're really interested in the answer to that question, it requires players to separate two completely different numbers. This is where I'm going to be very careful here, because I've rolled my eyes repeatedly when people use, well, maybe there just isn't enough interest, as a magical answer to everything. Battlefield has players, my dudes. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But total Battlefield population and your available matchmaking population are not necessarily the same fucking number. They never have been. Let's start with everybody playing Battlefield. Okay, now narrow it. What platform are you on? Now narrow that further. You have crossplay enabled or disabled. Again, narrow it down. What region are you in? Keep narrowing it down. What mode are you playing? Dudes, we're still narrowing things down. What time are you playing? Now potentially narrow it further according to whatever matchmaking criteria Battlefield itself is using. Okay, with me so far? And now ask how many people are actually eligible to enter this particular match with you right fucking now. That's the number matchmaking cares about. Not how many people are playing Battlefield this week. And those two numbers can be radically different without requiring the game's dead, people. That's a crucial difference, wouldn't you say? Because when you turn crossplay off on Xbox, you're not telling Battlefield, find me one of the millions of Battlefield players. You're telling it, find me eligible Xbox players who have also disabled crossplay in my matchmaking environment, playing what I'm playing when I'm playing it. And every restriction reduces the available pool. So now there's a new problem. The game can make you wait. It can give you an incomplete server. It can insert bots. Or it can broaden the matchmaking pool. Which brings us right back to the thing you turned off in the first fucking place. Fucking crossplay. And this is where Battlefield Studios makes part of the argument for me. Because players have specifically asked, why can't we have console-only crossplay? Not PlayStation only, not Xbox only, console only. PlayStation and Xbox together, PC separate. Seems obvious, right? Well, Battlefield Studios recently answered that exact question. And their explanation was basically, well, we're discussing it. But adding a console-only option has a drawback. It creates another matchmaking pool. Battlefield says the current system already attempts to prioritize console players against other console players when possible. But if there aren't enough console players available at the time, PC players and bots drip into the server to help fill it and prevent long matchmaking times. So Battlefield's argument is essentially, we're already trying to give you the console-heavy experience you want, but we're not guaranteeing it because eventually we need to fill the fucking server. And that's not an insane or insidious position. Which creates a new data point, because the console player's position isn't necessarily insane either. Console player. I don't want to play against PC. Okay, fair enough. Battlefield. We need enough players to start your match. Also, fair enough. Console player. Fine, I'll disable crossplay. Matchmaking. Fan-fucking-tastic. Here's Hot Dogs for Life, your AI support battle buddy. Nobody necessarily has to be lying here. Nobody necessarily has to be stupid about it either. The goals simply conflict. Console players want more control over who enters their matches. Battlefield wants larger matchmaking pools so matches fill quickly. Players want fewer bots, lower matchmaking times, good connections, their preferred mode, and populated servers. And some players simultaneously want an entire platform removed from consideration. Those things don't necessarily coexist perfectly, fellas. Which brings us to what sounds like the obvious solution. Fine. Console-only crossplay. PlayStation plus Xbox. PC gets its own pool. Done. And honestly, this shit sort of confuses me a little. I mean, I get why players keep asking for this, but only up to a point, because it immediately sounds better than the current crossplay off implementation. Instead of PlayStation only or Xbox only, you combine both console populations. That should theoretically create a substantially healthier console matchmaking population than either platform gets independently, right? And players have been asking for exactly this. Some explicitly describe the current crossplay off system as basically a bot queue and argue that turning crossplay off should mean Xbox plus PlayStation, not my console only. Other players say the same thing but offer another solution, input-based matchmaking. And we'll get there. The part that confuses me is that crossplay has been asked for on all multiplayer games for over a decade. And now that we have it here, and have it specifically in Battlefield, players want segregation again. Like, dudes, make up your fucking minds already. Let's go! With this topic and several others we've covered on this channel, a lot of you sound like you have split personalities. Anyway, before we declare console-only crossplay the magical answer, there's a problem. Battlefield Studios' objection doesn't disappear. You just created another matchmaking pool. Potentially, we now have PC, console only, full crossplay, crossplay disabled entirely, depending on how the systems are implemented. And every time you allow players to separate themselves into another matchmaking category, you're dividing the available population again. Now, maybe that's worth it to some of you. That's a completely legitimate argument. Maybe console players would happily wait longer if it guaranteed no PC players. Some players explicitly say exactly that. Fine, whatever. It's a simple preference. But notice what happened. The trade-off was not eliminated. You still have to choose one. Okay, so you choose to accept longer matchmaking in exchange for greater control over your opponents. That's very different from just fixed crossplay, because now you've actually defined what you're willing to sacrifice. Then there's another proposal I keep seeing. Forget the platform. Match by input. Controller versus controller. Mouse and keyboard versus mouse and keyboard. And then there's a bit of a legitimate argument for that too. Because platform isn't necessarily the same thing as input anymore. You could use a controller on PC. You could use mouse and keyboard on console. So if the complaint is actually, I don't want controller players fighting mouse and keyboard players, then why are we dividing matchmaking by the box set sitting underneath somebody's television? Some PC players in the current discussion make exactly this argument. They're on PC, but they use a controller. Their friends are on console. But because their matchmaking systems care about platform rather than simply input, they're treated as PC even though they're literally using the same input method as their console friends. So input-based matchmaking says, fine, controller pool, mouse and keyboard pool, platform becomes secondary. And conceptually, I can absolutely understand that, but we have the same fucking problem again, folks. Potentially another matchmaking division, another eligibility criterion. Just another way of shrinking the pool available for any particular match. Maybe the resulting pools are large enough. Maybe they aren't. Maybe it's worth the trade-off. Shit, maybe it isn't. But once again, the proposed solution doesn't eliminate the balancing problem. It changes where the line is drawn. That's all. And here's where Battlefield makes its own argument considerably more, shall we say, dynamic. Because console-only crossplay isn't some theoretical technology Battlefield Studios hasn't figured out how to build. They already fucking have it. REDSEC Ranked. Battlefield's official ranked documentation says PC and console players are matched separately. A full PC squad gets PC matchmaking. A full console squad gets console matchmaking. And if you mix PC and console players in the same squad, you're placed into PC matchmaking. So, hold on. Console-only matchmaking exists, right now, inside Battlefield. And Battlefield Studios themselves specifically referenced the introduction of console-only crossplay in REDSEC Ranked when answering whether it could come to a core multiplayer. So the question becomes more focused. If console-only matchmaking is workable there, why isn't it workable as an optional pool in standard multiplayer? And Battlefield has given us an answer, ladies and gentlemen. Matchmaking fragmentation. Okay, but that doesn't automatically end the discussion for you lot, does it? Because clearly the technical concept itself isn't impossible. Battlefield has decided the trade-off is acceptable for one environment and apparently believes it may not be acceptable for another. And maybe that's a policy or design decision worth discussing. And I don't think asking Battlefield to explain that distinction is unreasonable.
All right.
So let's put Battlefield's position on trial here. Their concern is legitimate. Matchmaking pools matter. You cannot indefinitely subdivide players and simultaneously guarantee instant matchmaking or full servers, no bots, low latency, every mode available, every region supported, every platform preference honored. Eventually, based on current technology alone, mathematics walks into the room and ruins everybody's fucking afternoon. But Battlefield also made choices about how those pools work. Crossplay is enabled by default. Crossplay off separates Xbox and PlayStation instead of combining them. The system prioritizes console players together but allows PC players to fill vacancies. And Battlefield has implemented console-only matchmaking elsewhere. So players may be completely justified asking, is the current compromise actually the best compromise? That's a different question from why doesn't Battlefield magically create players? Maybe console only should exist. Or perhaps input-based matchmaking is better. Conceivably, Battlefield should allow players to select their preferred compromise. Maybe there should be prefer console only, input-based, full crossplay. But again, every additional choice potentially creates another pool. So Battlefield doesn't get completely off the hook here. But neither does the player. Because let's be fucking honest about what we're asking for. We want all the things. Fast matchmaking, full servers, no bots, low ping, balanced teams, our preferred game modes, our preferred regions, real players, good connections, and sometimes some of you motherfuckers also want Battlefield to exclude the entire platform. Okay. Which one of those are you willing to give up? Because something has to move. If your answer is, I'll wait 5 minutes for console only, excellent. That's a coherent position. Just like the old days of Battlefield 4. If your answer is, I don't care about PC players, just get me into a full match immediately, also an excellent choice, sir. If your answer is, I'd rather fight bots than mouse and keyboard, okay, that's your preference. And anyone giving you shit about it is an asshole anyway. If your answer is controller versus controller regardless of platform, fine. Now we're talking about input-based matchmaking. But if your answer is, I want instant matchmaking, perfect connection, every mode, no bots, full servers, and absolutely no PC players under any circumstances, well, what exactly is Battlefield supposed to prioritize when those requirements conflict or not all of them can be met in a reasonable way? Which leads to who defines reasonable. You or Battlefield Studios? That's the part of this conversation I don't think gets discussed enough. And there's another uncomfortable question here. How much of the PC problem is real? And how much is it perception? Again, I'm not telling console players they're imagining everything. There are objective differences between platforms and inputs, that's not up for debate. Mouse and keyboard behaves differently from controller, hardware capabilities vary, cheating is a legitimate concern players associate heavily with PC, real or imagined, and controller aim assist exists partly because analog sticks and mouse input aren't equivalent. But community experiences are all over the fucking place. One Xbox player may describe crossplay off matchmaking as lacking, while another player in the same discussion might say they had moved from console to PC, continued using a controller, and felt Battlefield's crossplay was reasonably fair. Another console player could suggest crossplay on matches feel dramatically sweatier. And yet, other console players say they compete just fine. Some players might believe the top of every scoreboard is PC owned. Others may point out controller players regularly perform extremely well. Which tells me we should be careful about turning I prefer not playing PC into PC players universally have an unbeatable advantage. Those are different claims, and fortunately, we don't need the second claim for the first preference to be legitimate. If your experience is more enjoyable without PC, well, that's useful information, but the system still has to find enough other people who made the same choice. And I think this may actually be where the entire conversation arrives at the depot. Bots aren't necessarily the core problem. Fuck you, I said what I said. They're just a symptom, my dudes. The actual problem is, Battlefield needs enough eligible humans to fill a match under the restrictions currently applied to that matchmaking request. And if it doesn't have enough, something has to happen. Wait longer, start partially filled, use bots, expand eligibility. Those are the levers, folks, and Crossplay is one of those levers. Which means remove PC players and remove bots can actually push the system in opposite directions. That's the dilemma. And some person can legitimately want both things, while the matchmaking system may not always be capable of providing both things at the same fucking time. So here's my verdict. I don't think console players asking for console-only crossplay are asking for something unreasonable. And yet, I don't think players asking for input-based matchmaking are being impossible to deal with. I don't believe people saying, fuck it, I'd rather wait longer than play against PC is being unreasonable. And I don't even think somebody saying, I don't care who's in there, just fill my fucking Battlefield server, is being unreasonable either. And strangely enough, I don't even think Battlefield Studios' explanation is unreasonable. Because another matchmaking pool really does divide matchmaking. Remember, EA stated that healthy matchmaking is part of why some core modes were pulled from standard rotation. It's all about that matchmaking. The problem is that there isn't one perfect answer here. Crossplay isn't really just one problem. It's a balancing act between competitive preference, input preference, platform preference, matchmaking speed, server population, bots, connection quality, mode availability, and last but not least, player choice. Fixing one can make another worse. Turn crossplay off, smaller pool. Smaller pool, potentially longer queues and more bots. Allow PC players, larger pool. Larger pool? Some console players believe their competitive experiences get worse. Console only? Potentially healthier console population, but another matchmaking pool. Input-based? Potentially solves the controller versus mouse argument, but potentially creates another matchmaking division. Every answer comes with an okay but.
Of course it is.
And that is the conversation I think gets lost when we reduce this whole thing to crossplay sucks or skill issue. Neither tells us anything useful. This is actually why I think Battlefield Studios' REDSEC decision is worth watching. Because they've already demonstrated that console-only matchmaking can exist inside Battlefield 6, so now we have something measurable. Does it work? How healthy are those matchmaking pools? What happens as player populations fluctuate? Does it produce acceptable queue times? And if it does, then the argument for bringing some version of console-only matchmaking into core multiplayer becomes considerably stronger. And if it doesn't, well, then Battlefield's fragmentation argument gets stronger. All of that is evidence, one way or the other. And that's considerably more useful than everybody screaming PC advantage and aim assist at each other until the fucking sun burns out. Because ultimately Battlefield has to answer a design question. How much matchmaking choice can you give players before that choice starts damaging matchmaking itself? And players have to answer another one. What are we actually willing to sacrifice to get the matchmaking experience we want? Because apparently just give me 63 other players exactly like me immediately isn't one of the fucking settings. And maybe that's the setting everybody actually wants, I don't know. Me personally, I simply don't care if my lobbies have bots or a swath of cross players inside it. I'm not that fucking picky. So here's what I want from you. Especially if you're playing Battlefield 6 on console, what compromise would you choose? Would you rather play against PC players and get populated matches faster? Wait longer for console-only matchmaking? Accept bots rather than play PC. Combine Xbox and PlayStation and keep PC separate. Forget platform entirely and use input-based matchmaking. And if you're on PC, I want your side of this as well. Do you think mixed platform Battlefield is actually unfair? Or are console players dramatically overstating the difference? And for everybody else, if Battlefield gave you 3 matchmaking settings tomorrow, full crossplay, console only, input based, which one are you choosing? And how much longer are you willing to wait for it? Because remember, collectively, we demanded crossplay for years and we finally have it. So, drop it downstairs in the basement we call comments. Thanks for watching, folks. Until the next one, out.